Hello everyone, welcome to the 23 best albums of 2023. Last year I made essentially a short film about the best albums of 2022. This year I'm just going to keep it a little simpler, okay? We're just going to focus on the tunes, focus on the music, and just roll with the list. Before we begin, I just want to give my overall thoughts on 2023. Overall, I thought it was just a really solid year. And to compare it to last year, I thought last year the great, amazing albums reached much higher highs. But I feel like overall this year was a little more consistent. Me personally, I enjoyed exploring different albums. And I think I spent a little more time checking out newer, more diverse, more interesting albums. And there were a lot of them. Okay, so I just felt maybe this year was a little more consistent, but may not have reached the highs of last year. Anyways, I've prepared a lovely list of 23 albums, and I hope you find something new, something interesting, and I would encourage you to try something out, okay? And so let's just go right into number 23. Let me pull up the list here. Here we go. Number 23 is called In the End It Always Does by The Japanese House. This is a really nice pop, just indie pop album, really beautiful vocals. I just think it's really well produced. Just the layering of the sounds in the music is just really well done, and I found myself going back to this album quite often throughout the year. Number 22 is called Again by Oneohtrix Point Never. Really interesting album. Mostly instrumental, kind of an electronic. I guess there's some real instruments as well. I just think this is a comment on technology and human existence. But how can that be when it's mostly instrumental? I don't know. It's just so interesting. It feels like a soundtrack to a really beautiful sci-fi movie, and that's number 22. 21 is Maps by Billy Woods and Kenny Segal, or Segal, don't really know. But this album was at the top of a lot of lists as I see throughout the year. I never really listened to it. I just assumed it was like a chill, cool hip-hop album, and it is that. It is a chill, cool hip-hop album, but after listening to it often, I really grew to love how dark the songs and the beats are. The writing is super chill, very well written. There's no choruses or hooks, which is refreshing. I just really love the darkness of the beats, okay? Check it out. Number 20 is maybe another little sci-fi album called Playing Robots into Heaven by James Blake. James Blake, I think, is a really, he's been around, which is weird to say. I remember when he just came out, and he started out as kind of a more minimal electronic artist, and I think a lot of his albums, he gets a little ballady, a little mid-tempo. I really like this album because he kind of goes back to his electronic and sampling roots. And I just want to shout out the song called Tell Me, which is an absolutely intense, amazing banger of a song. Number 19 is called The Record by Boygenius. I think this, honestly, this was Boygenius's year. 3 just amazing singer-songwriters, and they really just kind of blew up. Now for me, I'll just be completely honest, I think this is a great album, and I think the best song of the year is on this album. It is called, what the heck is it called? Not Strong Enough? Not Strong Enough. I do think that's like the best song of the year. Personally, sometimes this slower indie rock stuff doesn't really get me going as much as I want it to. I don't know. But I do think this is a really great first full album from this band. Number 18, and for those of you who don't know, I kind of released a best album of the list so far, kind of midway through the year. This album was on there. This is number 18. It's called Praise the Lord Who Chews, But Which Does Not Consume by Yves Tumor. And this is just a really great kind of, I would say like indie rock, okay? Now, the term indie is used a lot, but this is more of an indie rock album, more on the rockier side, and it's just a strong album. Number 17 is another electronic album, I've Seen a Way by Mandy, Indiana. I played this for my wife on a car ride, and I really just personally came to the realization, and I told her, if I could make music, this is what I would make. This is like techno music from Blade Runner, and it's intense, it's also kind of dark, brooding, okay, but also has some really cool samples and some, actually a surprising amount of vocals that I was shocked by. Really cool album. Okay, number 16, reposition. Number 16 is HELLMODE by Jeff Rosenstock. I would say this is probably the most underrated album of the year. I don't see a lot of people talking about it. It's a punk rock album. Jeff Rosenstock has made some really amazing albums the past few years, and I just think this is his best album. It's the best produced, the best written, the structures of the songs themselves are just great. It gives a diversity to the album that I think he didn't really have before. Maybe he did, I don't know, who am I to judge, okay? HELLMODE is great by Jeff Rosenstock. That was number 16. Number 15 is The Land is Inhospitable and So Are We by Mitski. I'm a pretty big Mitski fan. I've been following her for a number of albums that she's released. I really actually enjoyed her last album quite a bit. She kind of went more for a poppier sound, and I thought that was exciting and fun. This album dials it back, and it focuses more on like a slower, maybe more mid-tempo, maybe more country sound. I would even compare this to the Arctic Monkeys' last album, The Car. It's kind of a more classic, beautiful sound. And I actually did not like this album at first. I was disappointed by it. But I've since really tried to put some time and effort into this album, and now I am convinced. It is a great, great album, okay? Yeah, that was, what was that? What was that? Number 15, okay? Check it out. Number 14, another techno album, love it. Madres by Sofia Kourtesis. Really, I've never listened to this artist, kind of came out of nowhere. I read a good review and I thought, man, I gotta check this out. I really love the propulsive nature of techno music. This artist's techno, I think, is kind of a throwback to almost like a 90s style techno, whatever that means. But it's less like crazy and more just propulsive, really beautiful, really great beats, really good tempos. So if you want to check out some techno music or get into it, I really recommend this as a great starting point from 2023. Number 13, the classic, Did You Know That There's a Tunnel Under Ocean Boulevard by Lana Del Rey. Some of these album titles are crazy this year. Let me just say that. There's some long album titles. This is another beautiful album from Lana Del Rey. Again, I think I commented before in my other video about the best albums of 2023 so far. Lana Del Rey has really become a very prolific artist, which is very special. You can spend more time getting to know, understand the artist, see how they change on a more day-to-day level. It's like year to year, but still, okay, you see what I'm saying? This album is just as beautiful, just as iconic as all her other albums, but I would just say even more so. I'm honestly just shocked she is able to create albums with such amazing classic songs. This album feels also a little more rough, like there's different interludes, different spoken word elements. Some of her songs are quite longer. There's different guest stars. So from the outside, I thought this would be like a messier album. Not the case. It's just a really diverse, beautiful album. And that's number 13. Number 12, I talked about in my other video as well, Radical Romantics by Fever Ray. Another great sort of pop techno album. For my money, the last like 3 or 4 songs are just perfect. She does a great job of balancing intense themes and topics. I'm spitting all over. Intense themes and topics into danceable music, but she also has slower, more intense songs that I really like. Number 11, we're almost to the top 10. Number 11, now I'm cheating here. I'm putting 2 albums down by the same artist. The first 2 pages of Frankenstein and Laugh Track by classic indie rock band The National. I'm a National fan. They released 2 albums this year. Really cool, really great. And again, I really respect bands that are prolific in that way, like Lana Del Rey. When the first album came out, Frankenstein, I think it left a lot of people wanting. It was really interesting to see. It's a slower, I would say it's a little more slower paced album. And it was interesting to see fans and other indie rock listeners kind of criticizing them for not having rockier stuff. And then I think Laugh Track came out. No one really saw Laugh Track coming out. And it has more of the rockier stuff, which I think was important. And I personally like Laugh Track better as an album for that reason. There's more of the wider range of The National on that album. And I also just want to say the song Laugh Track might also be my favorite song of the year. I just think it's really heartbreaking, really beautiful. And so 2 albums for number 11. I'm cheating, okay? Top 10, let's do this. Number 10 is 10,000 Gecs by 100 Gecs. A lot of ones and zeros. I didn't plan that, I swear, okay? This album is bat, S-H-I-T, insane. It came out early in the year, and it is, for me, the most addicting album that I've listened to. 100 Gecs is kind of just a wild group, what would you call them? A wild duo. They cover a lot of range of genres on their album. As I said before, there's like songs that sound like Limp Bizkit, okay? There's more techno-based songs. There's more folky rock songs. And this album is just a lot of fun. That's what this album is. 100% fun. There's some more ones and zeros. Number 9, I listened to later in the year. It's called My Back Was a Bridge for You to Cross by ANOHNI and the Johnsons. This is, I think, the most honest album of the year, both in terms of lyrics, but also just instrumentation. It feels you are at a bar with a kind of a classic sounding live band just playing their hearts out. There's a lot of live sounds, drums, guitars, and ANOHNI himself or herself is a really beautiful singer. The lyrics are, I actually respect the lyrics being so direct. It adds a level of earnestness and emotion to each and every song that I think sometimes gets lost in like this overproduction-y world of music. And this is a really just great album, okay? Number 8, Quaranta by Danny Brown. Another rap album. I'm a huge Danny Brown fan. This, besides Boygenius, I think this was the year of Danny Brown, okay? He released his solo album, this album, at the end of the year, towards the end of the year. I really respect Danny Brown. It sounds like he really made a major effort to get sober this past year. He has a podcast where you can kind of listen to his interviews with other people, and he talks quite a bit about his journey getting sober. And so I think because of that, he has made his best album. It's more self-reflective. I think he talks more about more serious and honest things on this album. The beats themselves are, I think, all over the place, but I do think the songs are a little slower and more dark. And again, I just tend to gravitate towards that style of hip-hop or rap music. Number 7, kind of a wild card. This is Desolation's Flower by a band called Ragana. Now, essentially, this is metal music, okay? I would say, though, I don't listen to metal music, and I think every once in a while, a metal album sort of breaks the mold and like crosses into the mainstream popular indie rock world. I do think this is one of those albums, and if you want to experiment, try out some metal music, this is probably a really nice starting point. The singing is obviously intense, but it plays more like a rock album, and it does have maybe more indie rock elements to it as well. Anyways, it's just a very intense, powerful record, both in the vocals and the playing. It's really quite simple, I mean, maybe in a way, just guitars and drums, which is another element that I think I really appreciate when a band can just simplify things to the most honest core of the music. And I think Ragana has done this here beautifully, okay? Number 6 is Everything is Alive by Slowdive. I've thrown the term indie rock around quite a lot. It's kind of a strange genre. I feel like it just means everything. I feel like indie rock is just like everything cool. But I think when you get to the heart of what indie rock is, I think it is something like this album by Slowdive. It's like a Radiohead mixture of electronic, maybe slower paced songs with a lot of guitar, but also a lot of sound effects and reverb, maybe echoey vocals. I don't know, all that stuff is kind of what I think about with indie rock. And for me, this is what this album does. It's indie rock at its finest. There's a mixture of female and male vocals, very dreamy guitar sounds and soundscapes. And I think every song just kind of fits perfectly along the 10 or so songs on this album. If you really want a good representation of this album, I highly recommend the song Kisses. And I would say that's probably one of my favorite songs of the year. Actually, it's probably the song I listened to the most this year. Like going back to an individual song, I just really like it. It's like a dream pop indie rock style of music. The album itself is, I think lyrically it's a little more optimistic. It's almost like secretively dark because I think the songs are a little icier, but the lyrics themselves are more uplifting, positive. There's a nice kind of pop echoing of electronic sounds, and I just think Everything is Alive by Slowdive is the quintessential great classic indie rock album of this year. What's next? Okay, we're doing the top 5. We're doing the top 5. For number 5, it's going to be Scaring the Hose by JPEGMAFIA and Danny Brown. Again, I'm a Danny Brown stan. And this album came out kind of earlier in the year. It's a collaboration between these two rappers, hip-hop artists. And it's a wild ride. I think when you listen to it initially, it is just all over the place, kind of sporadic. And I think it did suck me in. It was cool to hear rap music use more intense, wild, glitchy beats and glitchy sounds. And that was really fun. But once you really get into it, it's interesting how many samples and the beats and the sounds that are selected are of classic sounding songs, classic vocals, classic instrumentation. And I think that's what this hip hop album does beautifully, is it combines old songs with a modern kind of wild copy and paste style of glitchy internet music. That's why I love it. It's also a really funny freaking album. It's JPEGMAFIA and Danny Brown really go great together, and they both are just kind of highlighting different things in society, but also just goofy topics. If I want to highlight a few songs, and for this top 5 I'm going to, Lean Beef Patty is a great opener. Any album that opens with a statement, "Fuck Elon Musk," I think is great, okay? And then Orange Juice Jones is a great song. And then a song called "Perfect," I think is a great representation of how a song can be kind of both glitchy but also epic sounding. So Scaring the Hoes by JPEGMAFIA and Danny Brown, number 5, amazing album. Number 4 is Soft Scars by Yeule. Now, Yeule's last album, Glitch Princess, I actually did not include on my album list of maybe a year or two ago because I just didn't listen to it. I remember hearing it was good, but I never checked it out. And I've since checked it out. It's amazing. It's like a slower paced kind of electronic, almost like a slower Bjork kind of thing. This newer album though is better. It's more pop, it's more rock, and I just really want to emphasize the grungy rock guitars. It feels like a 90s kind of inspired rock album, but there are a lot of electronic elements as well, and so I think it's that perfect mixture of electronic but also 90s grunge, fuzzy guitars. And by the way, I'm a fuzzy guitar fan, okay? To highlight some specific songs, Software Update, Daisy's, Inferno are all great songs. And then my favorite song is called Cyber Meat. Cyber Meat, I think, is the go-to representation of what I think this album does well. The songs are very layered and have different elements and structures to them. The lyrics, I will be honest, are quite cringy, but I think it adds a playfulness to the album, and it also does a great job just rocking out. And so Soft Scars by Yeule is number 4. Great album. I'm happy to see it on the top of other album lists as well. Number 3, folks. We're ramping up here. Number 3 is Let's Start Here by Lil Yachty. This is an amazing album because I think it really represents an artist breaking through some sort of creative mold and just really going for something else. Lil Yachty notoriously, I think, is kind of seen as, I don't really know if he's seen as like a mumble rapper, but I think he's part of that brigade of modern rappers coming up where they're not really good at singing, they got a lot of distortion on their vocals, and they say silly things. But it's incredibly impressive to see someone like this, an artist like this, who I just didn't care about, really just create something magical. Lil Yachty has gone into the realm of like psych rock, and I'm all for it. It's a super adventurous album. Some songs are 6-7 minutes of just rocking out. And then some of them are those more simpler, poppier, kind of vocally inspired hip hop songs that also sound great on this album. I do want to highlight also, there's a female vocalist on this album named Diana Gordon. Oh my God. She's on a couple of songs on this album. Holy, check her out, Diana Gordon. Her voice is beautiful, and she has extended singing verses on a number of songs that really just elevate this album to a whole other level. Some of the songs have different changes and structures to them that make them really interesting, that keep them entertaining. And I just think Lil Yachty has really created something special. I can't wait to see what he does next, okay? The songs I really love are The Ride, Drive Me Crazy is amazing, Say Something. These are kind of more classically like hip-hoppy type stuff. But then the more adventurous, maybe more rock and roll, psych rock stuff, Black Seminole, I've Officially Lost Vision is an insanely amazing song with a very beautiful ending. And then the last song of the album is pretty wild too, Reach the Sunshine. It's such a cool album. Let's Start Here by Lil Yachty. Number 3. Number 2 and 1 have got to be good, and I think they are. Number 2. Number 2 is the album I've listened to the most this year. Quest for Fire by Skrillex. I went through some stages of embarrassment for loving this album. I listened to a couple songs and I thought, I'm not listening to a Skrillex album. It's not gonna happen, okay? But after I heard especially a couple of his singles, specifically Butterflies, I thought, this is cool. This is real good. Since listening to the album, it is a front to back banger of an album. I cannot stop listening to it. And what's great is not only is every song really diverse and special and different, but within the songs themselves, there's so many cool moments. And that's why I love this album. There are just a number of moments within moments that I keep returning to. And I think Skrillex has, evidently this is some sort of comeback album for him, okay? I actually don't really care what it is. It's just such an exciting album. And if you have to throw a party, get work done, play a video game, go for a jog, I don't know. I just think this album can encompass so much of your life and be the background music of so many hyped up elements of your life to help you get energized. It's just such a great album. There's a string of songs kind of in the middle that I think are just bombastically good. Butterflies, Inhale, Exhale, A Street I Know, Xena, Into Too Bizarre is what that 5 songs that are in the middle of the album. Just an amazing string of songs that I keep returning to. And really every song on the album is great, honestly. And that's all I have to say. It's Quest for Fire by Skrillex. Techno, electronic to the max. The samples are brilliant. The vocal samples are absolutely inspiring. And I just think it's a very, very special album. I hope more people listen to it because I didn't see a lot of representation of it on album lists throughout the year. I'm bummed out. I think Skrillex gets a bad rap, but I think this album's gonna launch him into the next stage of maybe a more respectable area of his career, of his music, whatever. Quest for Fire, so good. Okay, the number 1 album of the year, in my opinion, obviously, is Heavy Heavy by a band called Young Fathers. And here's the album, right here, okay? Shout out to Ginny and Kyle. I got this album in a record store in Syracuse that they took me to. I don't want to give the name of the record store because I'm kind of calling them out, okay? This album was in the bottom of a bin, kind of tucked away underneath the rack of records into like a blowout sale bin. And I just think that is an interesting representation of how this album's kind of like treated. Very unknown. And it did receive some high praise throughout the year, as I saw. But towards the end of the year on a lot of album lists, I'm really not seeing it on lists. This album came out in early February, I think, or sometime in February. So very early in the year. I didn't listen to it until a couple months ago. I kind of saw the album cover. It's kind of a weird, iconic looking album cover. And I just passed it off, whatever. But then I read a good review and I thought, man, I'm going to add that to the list of albums I got to check out. Finally got around to listening to it. It is my favorite album of the year, okay? Is it the album I listen to the most? No, okay? But I just think everything about this album is special. A thing I want to highlight, okay? I feel like music like this isn't around as much. And the way I would describe this music, it's a very exciting, uplifting style of music. It's very joyous. You feel like everyone involved in this album is just having a great time. It's another special aspect about this album is that it's really kind of genre-less, meaning it's hard to describe. It's got elements of funk, pop, rock and roll, hip hop, like tribal drums, a lot of electronic and sampling. There's kind of choir backing vocals. There's backing vocals and singers. There's strings. I mean, there is so much going on with this album. It all just combines to make this and just again, an uplifting, beautiful, exciting piece of art. And I think, just for me personally, it just helped me be in a better mood, okay? And sometimes I think that's all we need from music sometimes, okay? Just to really lift you up and get you excited about things. And that's not only the last album, that is true as well, but especially this album. I would recommend just starting the album. The first 3 songs I think are just a beautiful representation of what this album is. The opener, Rice, is awesome. The second song, I Saw, is, again, you'll kind of see a changing of the genre a bit in the introductory elements, I guess, of the song. And then it goes into the next song called Drum. This is like a 3-punch knockout for an intro of an album, and it really sets the stage for, I think, just a really fun, life-affirming ride into art. I just absolutely love this album. Some other songs, Sink or Swim and Holy Moly, are just really fun songs as well. And so, not only is this my favorite album of the year, but again, I'm putting it at number 1 to really raise awareness. Please, people, just for the betterment of your life, I recommend checking out this album, Heavy Heavy by Young Fathers. I hope it brings you joy, okay? And there you have it. The 23 best albums of the year 2023. Now, I've made a YouTube playlist, and it's going to be in the, description. It's 23 songs. I picked my favorite song from each album and just threw it on a list. Please check it out. If anything, just to check out new music, okay? I hope you all have a wonderful new year. Thank you all so much for watching, and here's to a Happy New Year. I'm going to replay the list, scrolling on the side, and I'll play you out with a little New Year tune. Thanks again, everyone. Have a good year. Happy New Year. See ya. Bye.